Australian jewel beetle.
Jester Bop.
Get ready.
The lost episode of Running with Bosco.
Which is not right now.
Welcome back to the Running with Bosco podcast. I'm Reed, he's Grant, he's Rafa. Behind the scenes, we have Peter Tessier running all the audio, waving to our audience on this podcast where they can't see him. But we're excited to be back here, and today we're diving a little bit into relics. But to do this, I'll invite all of our listeners to close your eyes, ground your feet, and picture this.
You are laying on your deathbed. You're sick. There is a mob outside of the hospital. They have pitchforks. They want to tear you to shreds.
Oh, no.
You are St. Francis of Assisi.
What?
What? Yeah, that's a great exclamation, Reed. But this, I don't know how accurate the mob part of this is, but in the 13th century, wait, when was St. Francis alive? Can we get a fact check? Fact check this. In the 13th or 14th century, whenever St. Francis was alive, when he was dying, the Franciscans...
Is it 12th century?
The 1100s, bro.
So he was born.
Okay, so around that time, the Franciscans had to place bodyguards outside of where Francis lay dying because they were worried that people were going to come in the moment he died and just tear him apart. Why? They wanted relics. Today we're talking about relics.
Whew, chills. Anyone else have chills?
I don't want to get torn to shreds.
I thought you were going to say because he was carrying a relic donor card on his ID.
Yeah.
All right, so relics, I think, are often misunderstood teaching of the church and practice of the church, especially relevant here at St. Thomas, because, when was it? A few months ago, we had the skull, not a fragment of the skull, the actual skull of St. Thomas Aquinas, right? And there was a big opportunity to venerate the relic. And so I think it's helpful if we get back to basics for a little bit. Relics are tangible connections to holy people and events. They're not magical objects, but they're tangible reminders. And again, normally it's people when we talk about relics, but it can also be events or sometimes even places you'll see relics of, right? And they're primarily associated with saints. And the great thing about a relic is it's a physical reminder of a holy person's earthly life, right? So sometimes we can picture St. Francis and we learn about him, and he almost seems too holy, right? Like, I can never be that. That's a different class of people. Not class of relic, we'll get to that in a second. Ooh. But that's a class of people that I can never be. And that's not true, right? We're all called to holiness. We're all called to be like the saints, and we're supposed to look up to the saints as these holy examples. And the veneration of relics is a practice rooted in honoring the example and witness of these holy individuals, right? And that comes from the Catechism 1674. And sometimes we can get confused in what's the difference between venerating or honoring and worshiping. And I think Rafa is going to help us with that.
Yeah, so I think this actually, this goes beyond the relic conversation, but is important to the relic conversation, this difference between veneration and worship. So in Catholicism, veneration is traditionally thought of as a form of respect and honor paid to saints and sacred objects including relics. While worship, big W worship, also known as adoration, is the ultimate reverence and homage given to God alone. So veneration, you can kind of, acknowledge the excellence and virtue of created beings, again, such as relics. But with worship, you acknowledge, I don't know what I'm quoting here. I'm quoting an AI overview. But you acknowledge the supreme excellence and lordship of God.
So if I'm hearing you right, worship reserved for God. Veneration is appropriate for relics and the saints, right? Just like we don't pray to the saints, we pray through the saints, right? We use their example and their closeness to God to help us grow closer to God through their prayers and through our emulation of their life. We talked a little bit about different classes of relics or categories of relics. Grant, could you help shine some light on what this means?
Oh, yeah. So in this case of St. Francis, his body when he died, and just to fill in the story a little bit, the mob didn't get to him and tear him to shreds. He passed away, and then they snuck his body away because they wanted to bury it with reverence and respect.
Sure. As you should.
As we respect the body in Catholicism. We recognize that we are corporal beings. And I mean, we're embodied, and there's something special about the human body. So Saint Francis was laid to rest, and then he was later exhumed, and that's when we sort of got these relics, or same with Saint Thomas Aquinas.
What does exhumed mean?
That's when the body is lifted up from the ground.
Okay.
So this is often happens with saints. One, it's often to check if their body is incorrupt, which means it isn't decaying or isn't decaying as you would expect of a human body. And that's a sort of common occurrence for very holy people. It's not universal. And it's also to distribute relics, to act as physical reminders and as sort of things to pray with to help us grow closer to God. So a first-class relic is a part of the body of a person. It's their piece of their hair. It's a knuckle bone. It's pretty metal, but it's a part of the body. The second-class relic is going to be something that the saint owned. So perhaps it's if they had a rosary, or it was what they wore, like their garb. You might have like a piece of Saint Francis's habit, which is what religious wear, like Saint Francis. And then third-class relics are just objects that were intentionally placed against a piece, like the body of a saint or a piece of their body. To sort of make them third-class relics. I think it's important that we don't sort of fall into superstition.
Right.
We don't think these are magical things. We don't think that by acquiring a third-class relic, we now have sort of this power over the world, which we didn't possess before, or that somehow God hears our prayers better. But they're just, again, reminders and means of grace, like God works in the world. And so by going through these processes of acquiring first, second, or third-class relics, we can actually draw closer to God through that.
Rafa, do you have a third-class relic? You seem to be gesturing during Grant's beautiful explanation. Is third-class relic you want to share?
Guys, I want to say yes. I need the validity confirmed on this, but
The team is ready. The team is ready.
Unfortunately, I don't know if this fact check will actually turn out well for me, but yes, apparently my cross was touched to a first-class relic of a certain saint. What saint is that? I will leave it in suspense.
What are we fact checking?
I think we're fact checking if Saint Michael the Archangel has first-class relics.
There are no first-class relics of Saint Michael the Archangel.
Right, angels don't have.
They don't have bodies.
But
we just talked about this.
He did go to places, right? And so perhaps there is a place he went to which could be a relic. I don't know what class that falls under.
This is
we'll
relicology. This is
right.
On the.
That fact check is a strong maybe or a weak maybe. One of my favorite relics that I want to say I've seen it, but that might be a lie, that I've heard about is a guy named Saint Brother Albert, who was a Polish, I think he was a Franciscan. And fun fact, he, maybe not a fun fact, just fact, he lost a leg. It was either, sorry, I think it was in war. I know it's not funny. But he used to, the story goes that he had a peg leg, and that's true. And he used to pretend to be run over by carriages. And he'd say, oh no, my leg is off, and then ask them to pay money. But now that I'm saying it, this doesn't sound real. Maybe we can fact check this real quick. The St. Brother Albert peg leg fact check. Anyways, all this to say, forget everything I just said. I once saw his peg leg, and there was a debate. First class relic, second class relic. Is it part of his body? Is it something he owned?
I'm going second class.
That was where we settled. We'll do a little fact check and come back to you later in the episode to see if there's any validity to the story of him potentially scamming people, which doesn't sound very cool.
Doesn't sound the best. Well, okay, I have a few third-class relics myself. I had the chance to go to Rome a couple of years ago and was able to touch a rosary to the sort of burial site of Saint Monica, who is the mother of Saint Augustine. And again, we don't get superstitious here. You don't literally have to touch your rosary to the bones. It's I placed the rosary on where she was buried, and that's sufficient. And then it's just something to pray with and sort of think about the saint and sort of emulate her virtues.
Boop, 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 boop. I'm gonna go with my story at best is a stretch. Okay. I heard this on a pilgrimage with Father Joseph Anthony. I don't think it's real though. Sorry.
That's how you know this isn't scripted.
It's true. So, like, what I mean, thinking about the church, how far back do relics go? Is it an important thing? Like, is this something that we've made up recently? Does it go back a long time?
Oh, it goes way back. I mean, it's going to go back to, our particular practice of like the veneration, right? We have this distinction between worship and veneration. Our practice of venerating the relics of the saints goes back to the time of the apostles.
The catacombs, right?
Right, the catacombs. You can, if you go to Rome, you can see the bones of Saint Peter. You can go see the bones of Saint Paul. They're there. They're preserved by the early Christians because we recognize the importance because we want to be like these saints.
Yeah, sources of inspiration for us today, however many thousands of years after Saint Peter, for example. Yeah, this isn't something new. This isn't something the church has just created out of nothing, but it's actually a very deeply rooted, ancient practice that connects us deeper and deeper with the Lord through this connection between heaven and earth, right? Our bodies still being here, or the remnants of our bodies, even though souls are in heaven, right? Mm-hmm. And one day we believe they'll be reunited in this beautiful, holy explosion of heaven.
Of heaven. And with that, do we have another point? No, that's great. With that, thank you for listening to Running with Bosco.